Hi, I'm Siobhan Fletcher, one of the journalists up at Manx Radio. Welcome to this latest edition of our Manx Radio newscast. Now, over the weekend, a number of EasyJet customers on the Isle of Man reported their travel plans were altered by the airline. It's understood a number of people had their flights from Ronaldsway rescheduled without notice. It wasn't known initially what was behind these changes, but it's emerged since that thousands of flights out of Gatwick have been affected. The airline then apologised, saying it was sorry for any inconvenience caused after alterations were made to its flight schedule. Many Manx customers reported the changes made to their bookings were done without warning. In a statement issued to Manx Radio, EasyJet said all airlines make some adjustments on an ongoing basis as needed, and where any changes to the schedule are made, we rebook customers on alternative flights in advance, along with the choice to rebook to a different flight or refund. We're sorry for any inconvenience this may cause. On Monday's breakfast show, we heard from a travel campaigner who says the risk of being stranded due to flight cancellation makes air travel not worth it. Brian Carr founded the EasyJet at Ronaldsway Facebook group last month after being impacted by a cancelled flight. That group has attracted hundreds of members who've been sharing their experiences, and Mr Carr has questioned whether the island's open skies policy remains the right approach. So yesterday, I spoke to Airport Director Gary Cobb, who says while the airline's decision to cut or change a number of services is frustrating for passengers, it's not within the airport's control. We talk social media speculation, air traffic control issues, and what the outlook is like for passengers going forward.
Hi everyone, my name is Gary Cobb and I am the Airport Director here at the Isle of Man Airport.
So can we chat about the air traffic rules and whether they apply everywhere? Are there any that are specific to the Isle of Man, or is this just something that you would see in any airport, the rules around brakes and things like that?
So the rules around brakes are pretty clear. In old language, they used to be called SRATCO, which is the scheme for the regulation of air traffic control hours. And they mandate how often they need a break, how often that they can work, operational time, start times, number of hours that they can do, what they need to do if it's a night shift, a day shift, a morning shift. And they apply to all UK airports. The rules have changed ever so slightly where they've moved to a more based on a fatigue management policy, but all the airports that I've ever worked with and all the airports I know have just adopted what used to be old SRATCO. So our ATCs will be taking the same mandated breaks that you would see in Heathrow, Gatwick, all the way through to Benbecula on the west coast of Scotland.
We know there's ongoing issues at the airport. We know that we're trying to recruit air traffic controllers, and we've had from the airport that hopefully we will see some sort of changes and an easing of that schedule by August. Are you still hopeful that maybe that'll still be the case?
Yeah. So at the moment, we have had an ATCO come back from sickness. Even if an ATCO is sick for a period of time, they then need to go back into the training pipeline and have an element of training to be able to then fully sit on the desk. So one of our ATCOs is back from that. We're currently in the process of consulting on rosters with our air traffic controllers, who having a roster change every couple of months is quite disruptive for them. So thank you very much, team. And then we have to consult with the CAA to check that the roster that we're proposing is safe and will allow us to fulfil the requirements placed upon us. And then I'm hoping that come the 1st of August, we won't be able to get rid of all of the brakes completely, but I think we'll be able to get rid of the majority of the brakes. But we'll be hopefully coming out to communicate that. It won't be this week, but hopefully it'll be next week or the week after.
To put it in layman's terms, how much control does the airport actually have over the flight schedule and the airlines coming in and out?
So in terms of the airport, so we operate open skies, and open skies basically makes the airport a marketplace. So we put airlines in contact with passengers. Basically, we'll provide the infrastructure, but even down to baggage check-in, gates, that's something that the airline provides themselves to people. Granted, they'll normally do that through a third party, which here is Menzies. But in terms of providing all of the ground staff to put steps onto an aircraft, all of that is provided through the airline's deals that they have with their ground handler. And we don't have a contract with that ground handler. That is purely for the airline. I think the only contract we have with the ground handler is rental space for all of their team to work. Now, we're very lucky that it's a very good ground handler here at Isle of Man with Menzies, so they do a good job. But again, unfortunately, what we've seen is quite a lot of off-schedule activity. In terms of schedule changes, airlines change schedules all the time. So the EasyJet schedule changes that we've just seen, I think it's 1,700 flights, predominantly out of Gatwick. Gatwick's seen quite a lot of ATC issues, bearing the brunt of everything that's going on in Europe in terms of either ATC strikes, ATC restrictions, what's going on in Ukraine, NATO exercises, or weather. So I think EasyJet are probably just putting in some stability into their schedule by reducing some of the frequencies on those routes. You do see on social media that it's because of the Isle of Man's ATC. We're not even factoring into it. This is just to allow their biggest base at Gatwick to have some resilience to be able to cope with it. The schedule change that we did to ATC was carefully done in that it shouldn't cause any cancellations. Ultimately, we'll be adding 30 to 40 minutes on to somebody's flight. So you'll be seeing delays which were caused by us. But the idea is if you've got a delay of 3-4 hours, chances are you've been touched by something that's going on in Europe, something that's going on in the wider UK network. People wonder why Europe has such a big impact on the Isle of Man. EasyJet is particularly exposed to Europe, and the Lake Gatwick flight has already done 4 sectors around Europe before it even gets here. So there's no ATC, Isle of Man ATC restrictions that touch that flight. But they are picking up, especially with the French potentially going on strike and most of the Eurocontrol regions going on strike at some point soon. But in terms of schedule, we have very little control over it. We have our published opening hours, which we changed to be like the 6:45 in the morning until the 8:45 at night. We do offer a summer extension to 9:30 p.m. and then everything after 9:30 p.m. is best endeavours for the team to be able to meet it. People sit there and go, well, why don't you cancel the EasyJet flight? And it's like, well, actually that EasyJet flight is scheduled to fly within our opening hours. So what grounds would I have to cancel that flight? The fact that it picks up delays, we try to mitigate with our team stopping on and offering extensions. But again, a lot of that is best endeavours by the team to work longer than the opening hours of the airport in order to facilitate flights which are good for the island.
I guess just to jump in there, like you say there, with the airlines picking up delays elsewhere, how difficult is it to plan that? Because presumably a lot of the time you don't know where the delays are going to be until the day of. So is there a lot of chopping and changing during the day, or is it that those times then are set in stone because that's just how it works with the rules?
No, so those times we've set in stone because of the rules. It's also consistency for the airlines. If we were to chop and change, you might change some of your schedule to suit an EasyJet late coming out of Manchester, but then that might have the unintended consequences of later on impacting the Logan Air Heathrow and the Edinburgh. So from experience, the best way to do this is to be absolutely crystal clear on what you're going to do, communicate it out and then stick to it. Which is why I find it particularly disappointing when you see pilots going, oh, we didn't know anything about the closure until 2 minutes before. We note this out with plenty of advance notice. We spoke to the airlines. Pilots should be reading their NOTAMs before they set off. There will be the odd occasion where we do something very, very last second because of short-term absence or doing some other change, but that's relatively infrequently. The reason we went out there is so that there'd be no surprises. Everyone can plan around it. And we have seen some of the airlines now start to tweak their schedules to better suit the changes. My experience, though, of a schedule is what you plan to do on the day kind of goes out the window as soon as an aircraft takes off. So if we were to change the timings, airlines would still come and land when we weren't open. So it's best just to go out there and be strict and straight and then go with it. And yes, unfortunately, it will have an impact on some flights where they will pick up a 30 or 40 minute delay. Any more than that, and chances are there are other factors coming into play there as well.
So then, Gary, I'd love to get your reaction then to the news over the weekend of EasyJet moving around a lot of flights. Obviously, you mentioned the issues across Europe. There's, well publicised elsewhere. There's a lot of issues in France at the minute as well with traffic controllers there. And then obviously today, Loganair has kind of stepped in to offer, quote, rescue fares to passengers. What's your reaction then as airport director to these changes from airlines?
So airlines will always change their schedule, and I saw on social media a lot of people have, it's disrespectful to the Isle of Man that they don't tell us. I doubt that any other airport, apart from maybe Gatwick, where they're seeing a swing of potentially 1,700 flights, will have been told. Mainly because it's just a small change in terms of an airport. We don't contract with airlines on routes. I think there seems to be a misconception that we sit there and sell the route to Gatwick and then therefore we can kick EasyJet off it and then bring somebody else in. That's not how routes work. EasyJet will come to us and say we want to fly the Gatwick route, and then our fares, our published fares or our contracted fares with the airline then come in. It's not we sit there and say, you can fly there or fly here at this time. The flying times, the destinations are completely and utterly at the airline's discretion. Any commercial airport wouldn't actually really care where airlines fly to, because ultimately they'll get the revenue no matter where they fly to. It's a little bit different in this role in that it's part commercial airline and then it's part lifeline service. So we do a lot of work to try and look after what routes we protect in order to provide the air connectivity that the island requires. So we'll have conversations to try and protect routes, but ultimately if someone's changing a frequency or cutting one out of the middle, then it's unlikely that we would be told. If they were pulling off the route completely, absolutely, they would have probably spoken to us about it, but they've just removed some parts of their schedule in the hope, I think, from on their side, that gives them the flexibility to be able to guarantee the other flights that are coming, to make sure that they go. In terms of Loganair offering the rescue flights, that's usual airline banter between them where they compete against each other for passengers to fly on different routes, but you would expect that of commercial entities.
And then this morning we heard from a campaigner who set up a Facebook group last month after being impacted by a cancelled flight. It's called EasyJet Ronald's Way, and Mr. Carr is sort of questioning the open skies policy. What's your reaction to seeing groups like that pop up, and what would your response be to that?
So I've seen the group, it's quite good. Keeping on top of all of the EasyJet times is a full-time job. But in terms of open skies, so open skies, closed skies is a political decision. So that's for the politicians to decide. The only thing that I will sit there and probably say is EasyJet is not an airline that will fly in closed skies. So if you close the skies or start to regulate routes, you will lose EasyJet, probably, because they fit us into their schedule rather than scheduling around us. And then so losing, it then becomes one of losing the low-cost carriers versus having like the full flag carriers. So that will likely have an impact on price. I think part of the problem here is people conflate price and consistency. A lot of people you see about talking about Manx Air. I wasn't here when Manx Air is, but a lot of people anecdotally tell me that the tickets to London were like £400 return. And what was that, 2000s? Or something like £250, £300 to Liverpool, Manchester. You get the service, but you have to pay for it. With EasyJet, you'll get there eventually. Unfortunately, with some of what they're seeing in Europe, but you're paying a really good price for it. And I think ultimately that's for the consumer to choose what is more important to them. But they have that with lots of different choices that they need to make. Most people know that the late Gatwick flight at the moment isn't that consistent. So again, factoring that into it. But again, if you need to get there on time, it's probably not a safe bet during this summer whilst everything's going to be up in the air. But then people can, I know that Loganair fly 3 times daily to London, so there are other options for people to fly, but the price will be significantly different from the cheap tickets that you can pick up on EasyJet.
And then my last question for you, and I'll be interested to see if you do want to answer this, is just if you knew then what you know now, would you have taken the job at Ronald's Way?
I knew that there would be challenges at Ronaldsway. I knew that this would take time to fix. I think there is a lot of myths out there. I think social media can be pretty toxic. You listen to some of the discourse on there, and it's just a shame that we can't get some of our messages across. And that's probably partly on us. We are looking, as you'll notice, we're trying to push more information out now. That takes a lot of resource. We've turned the comments off on some of that just to make it so that it's the information. We don't have the actual capacity to be able to answer everybody's queries, which is why we've just turned the comments off, because we get a lot of questions where people say they've asked the airport a question. We'd rather have it emailed in. We can probably respond to it better than just keeping an eye on Facebook all of the time. But the challenges were the same pretty much for most airports coming out of COVID, coming out of Brexit, and having other issues in terms of funding and money available. I think we have the master plan that we will hopefully be coming out at some point in late summer, autumn. I think that we've got a good team in place here at the airport. In terms of air traffic control, we went out and started recruiting, I think, in October of last year. So what's that, 2 months after I joined? And to be fair to my predecessors, they were out recruiting in 2018, 2019, and there was an element of luck and COVID. So I know that in 2018, 2019, I think we've recruited 3 experienced ATCOs. 1 has left, 2 are still in training, and we recruited 5 trainee ATCOs, of which 4 have failed, 1 is still in training. So the recruitment was there, but this isn't a job where you can sit down in front of a computer, get a certificate, and then you're ready to go. And thankfully so, every time I fly, I'm really happy for the rules and regulations around what these guys do. So again, thank you to the team in air traffic control, who I think have been taking an unfair amount of brunt on social media, which shouldn't be directed at them.
That's all I've got, Gary. If there's anything else you'd like to add at all?
I suppose the only thing I would add is that in terms of air traffic control and car parking, I see a lot of questions of why are you focusing on car parking when you have an issue with air traffic control. And part of that is our budgeted number of ATCOs was 14. We've recruited to 18. So it's getting the funding to be able to afford that. Money across government is tight. So we've basically been told that we need to find any additional funding ourselves. So in order to find some of the funding, raising car parking prices, which haven't raised in 5, 6, 7 years, we thought was a fair way to try and fix some of the issues, again, around air traffic control that we've been seeing, so that we have the right number in place going forward so this doesn't happen, or we have the right level of operational resilience. Because whilst we've got the right budget for it, there is no operational resilience, and that's what's hurt us this time.
Thank you for making it to the end of the Little Manx Radio newscast. You are obviously someone with exquisite taste. May I politely suggest you might want to subscribe to this and a wide range of Manx Radio podcasts at your favourite podcast provider, so our best bits will magically appear on your smartphone. Thank you.